Sarah Johnson, would you read 6A? Oh, we got another hand back up?
I don't think
Wayne, did you have another question?
Nope, I'm just gonna lower it.
All right. Good. Thanks for the help.
Public
Sarah,
safety
go ahead.
evacuation process discussion.
Public safety evacuation process discussion. I think a lot of people looking forward to this. So let me invite Fire Chief Randy Royal and Police Chief Vince Niski and Mr. Reed, the Regional Director from the OEM. And we also have our Fire Marshal here, Brett Lacey. So Brett, did you want to bring a chair up too? You're good? All right. Well, Chief Royal, we're going to let you kind of start this off. I think we've all been looking forward to this, so thank you for being here this morning.
Okay, I appreciate it, President Strand, and look forward to the opportunity to talk and share here. So just a little history. We obviously have had wildland fires here and other events, including flooding and those type of things over the years, hazmat incidents. And I'll start off by saying I'm very confident in the plans that we have in place in our working relationships, both with Colorado Springs Police Department and the Office of Emergency Management, and think that we do have a good history of being successful in our operations. That being said, I know there's a lot of concern about evacuation plans and modeling. Again, we do have plans in place that are based, and Chief Niski can speak to those as we go along. Also, there's been discussion about modeling and those type of things. We did, our staff did take a look at the fleet modeling that's been put out there as an option to look at for our community. Fleet, F-L-E-E-T. Our only concern with that, and I want to, at this point, make a statement as well relative to Fire Marshal Lacey. There was been some heat on him because of saying that we can't do modeling. He never said we can't do modeling. He said that modeling in and of itself really brings you to a point in time. And that point in time, is relative to the weather at the time, the people in an area, the topography, and other factors, and people making certain decisions, those type of things. That comes back to a point in time. So it's good in that you can do that, but it's not good in the fact that when we have an event, we are going to be making those decisions live, and that's where my confidence comes in, is that our people are good at that. They know what they're doing. We are not going to hesitate, and we haven't in previous things, and I'll use Bear Creek and Cedar Heights and the Waldville fire as pulling the trigger for evacuation. If we feel like we need it, we're gonna be very active and proactive with that. With that, understand that there are times that we're not going to immediately call for an evacuation based, again, on those things, weather factor, topography, time of day, those type of things, and knowing that we have the resources to handle that situation. If we feel like there's anything outside of that, we're going to pull the trigger. And part of whenever we use the incident command system, which is part of the National Incident Management System, whenever we set that up, we can join with our other agencies that we collaborate with, whether they're local or the state, the county, to work on these to make sure we have the resources available. With that, and again, we have used these in previous fires, we'll set up trigger points. So if we don't evacuate immediately, we're already setting up trigger points to go, okay, if it gets to this point, we're evacuating this area. And again, working with PD and their staff. So there's planning that goes into that. Again, we have plans that help us through that whole process, and I am confident in that. Now, I did share, I think, with you, President Strand, that we have met and we have upcoming. We're looking at some software programming that's out of California that's presently being used in a number of fires out there that could enhance our abilities with the zones that we presently have. That can get them down to smaller chunks, if you put it that way, that we can notify specific areas so we don't have to evacuate a larger area until we need to, which helps on flow and traffic flow and getting people out. The other thing, it ups our ability to use different platforms like social media and Waze and those type of things to get the word out. So we are looking at it. We haven't made any decisions on that. We have a meeting coming up here in a couple weeks to have them come out and do a full presentation on it. So we'll have more information after that.
Okay. Comments, questions from City Council on this whole issue of safety evacuation process? And we've heard a lot from, our constituents about this, especially on the west side. So Randy, you want to start us off with questions or comments?
I do. Thank you, gentlemen. Is there any value to conducting an evacuation exercise in specific communities?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because I should have mentioned it. Director Reed here can speak to that. We have done a number of them over the years, and we continue to plan to. And before I pass it over to him, I'll say that this software that we're looking at also has the ability to do training and drills tied to the software, where the community be involved with it actually on their phones and their home computer and see the zones and those type of things. So that's some of the value.
Yes, Councilmember Helms, we do a lot of, I think we've done 7 in the last 10 years full scale, where we've brought them down, and we've brought in Red Cross to show them what a shelter looks like. We've brought in the Humane Society to show them what happens with their animals. We've processed them through, we've fed them, also as well, Salvation Army has fed them so they understand what they're up against. And we have safety briefings and booths. We talk about readiness, were they ready, were they not ready, so it's constantly reinforced that our constituents are ready, and the ones who participate have a good understanding of what's expected and what they'll get when they do evacuate.
Thank you. Do you anticipate, and I think, Chief, you mentioned in the future, if you go with these additional evaluations that you may get, I guess I expect to see some exercises in the future?
Yeah, those will continue as we move forward. That's part of our ongoing education and pre-planning.
Okay, Richard Scorman, I see your hand up. Over to you.
Yes, thanks for coming today, and I know it's not easy to reveal that you may be entering into a contract with a vendor that is going to be possibly really upgrading our evacuation system. But I appreciate the details, and I wanted to kind of to highlight what you were saying and seeing if I'm getting it right. But that there's an entity out there that you're working with has worked a lot in California with very sophisticated communication modeling and software to be able to make sure that we're evacuating people in the right places at the right times. And I really want to emphasize that you are looking at that just because you're not accepting somehow this fleet modeling or what FEMA had in place in 2010, it doesn't feel like it is valuable for us, but we are certainly looking at every possibility that's out there to make sure that we would have the best evacuation response, right?
Yes, that's correct. We're always open, and I think I can speak for all 3 agencies up here. We're always open to learning and seeing what's out there that can help us out and help do our jobs better. And whether it's software or collaborative relationships with other agencies, and again, I'll speak to that real quickly. In the last couple of years, we've really strengthened our ties both with the county and the state, with the ability to communicate and work together to where when we have a response, and you saw it on the Bear Creek fire, we had both county and state resources there right away, and we're able to get air support very quickly into that. And that's part of that collaborative work that we're doing. And again, with Chief Niski, we have a great working relationship with his staff. And when we set up on a fire, and I'll use Bear Creek as the example again, our command staff are together making those decisions and working hand in hand. So as soon as when that incident commander made the call for evacuation, the police department was right there and they started doing it. And everything I heard, it went very smoothly, and we were able to get people out.
And Mr. Scorman, we're really hoping that the new software will give us live modeling while we're in while we're in a situation. It will actually model evacuations as we go. Like Chief Royal said, the pre-planned modeling that we have is you look at it, but things change. The modeling software, we're hoping, after we look at it, we're hoping that it will actually give us some live plans as we go through a live incident. And I would just like to echo Chief Royal's comments about being confident that we are prepared. That's not to say something couldn't happen that we're not prepared for. I don't want to be here saying we're 100%, but we've done this. We've done it for the last 10 years. We work really well together with OEM, the fire department. We do a lot of evacuations outside of wildfires. We do evacuations for floods. We do evacuations for tactical responses, for active gunmen's incidents. So we do evacuations yearly, even though it's outside of the fire.
Okay, well, great. Let me just end with a brief comment. I know that, we're talking tomorrow, we're going to have on our agenda, a possibility of putting a table refund of up to $20 million for fire mitigation. And I wanted to also add that when I have talked to you, Chief Royal and Fire Marshal Lacey, that one of the big purposes of that is to help private landowners, the people that own the houses in the WUI, to be able to not only understand how to keep their properties safer and their structures harder, but also to be able to talk about evacuation planning as well, to make sure they know what's available, where and when, and what we may learn as well from that. But it's not something that that anybody's taking lightly, and I think that that somehow there's an assumption out there that we're not doing everything that we can, and this new software, from what I've heard, would really be that real time, looking at weather coordinates, looking at fire behavior, understanding traffic patterns at that very moment, and really being able to get people out as safely as possible. And I know, Chief Royal, you mentioned to me on the phone, I think we talked yesterday about what happened with Waldo was really quite a job. We were successful. Everybody got out, but at the time we had to evacuate that whole northwest part of the city, all the way up to the Air Force Academy at the same time. And what this software will allow is for more incremental strategic evacuation. And I think that's what many of the people who are concerned about this issue want to make sure that we're doing. And so I'm very excited about this software. I'm not saying I know enough about it to be a professional, but I think that it's good to be the best that we can. And this sounds like it might help us do that.
Yes,
Thanks, Richard. Does anybody want to comment? Go ahead, Chief Royal.
if I could, I want to echo a couple things there too. So mitigation is an important part to us being a safe community, and I want to say that in both the Bear Creek fire and then in Cedar Heights part of the Waldo fire, mitigation saved lots of homes, because we have certain resources and we can do so much depending on the weather and the winds and those type of things. But we work right now, we have a division that works with mitigation out of the Fire Marshal's office, and we work with over 140 different home associations and neighborhoods, but we still need people to be active. So even within each of those neighborhoods, there's some people that get involved and they follow what we ask, and we work with them and we get our chipping crews out there and we do mitigation, and there's others that don't. And so when it comes down to that fire, we're going to be making decisions on the houses that we can save and houses that we can't save based on ones being mitigated and not mitigated, to try to save the most that we can. And so as a community, I really echo the fact that we have to come together with mitigation and do the best we can and work with our neighbors, not just us, but the county and the other fire departments and the DOD to make it as safe as we can. And that's our goal. The other thing is on education. Both the fire department and OEM provides online information about how you can be safe and how you can be prepared to evacuate your home. And again, we recommend it, especially anybody in the WUI. We have 35,000 homes in the WUI that have been identified, is that they sit down and they look at that as a family and pre-plan. so that when we do call up and it's an immediate evacuation, they're not wasting any time and they get out. Or if they're put on pre-evac, they have some time to get things ready to go that they want to take with them, and then they get out. In Waldo, in Black Forest, in the Troublesome Fire, in those 3 fires, 6 lives were lost. All 6 of them did not follow evacuation orders. Everybody else got out safely.
Thank you for that. I think we're fortunate to have, Chief Nitschke, Chief Royal, and Mr. Reed here today. We've got people watching, on television, maybe about 20 here in the Blue River conference room with us. But I'm going to ask you a hypothetical since I've got you here. And I'll start with the police chief, Chief Nitschke. Let's, God forbid, we get a wildfire. And I know our mayor has said it's not if we're going to get one, it's when it's going to happen. And hopefully it's a long way off. But when it happens and we have a wildfire, probably our biggest threat, maybe more so than flooding or more so than hostage situations where we have to have evacuations. So Chief Nitschke, if we had a wildfire in my neck of the woods, which is Old Colorado City on the west side, what is the police department's primary mission should that happen?
We have multiple primary missions on that. First of all, it would be to get the message out that there's a wildfire along with the fire department so that people know. We would probably do an emergency notification system, notification to everybody in the area. Coordinate our efforts with the fire department, try to block people from going into that area, as well as evacuating people out of that area. Try to identify who's at home when we're doing those evacuations. As Chief Royal said, we don't force people out of their homes.
Right.
We do evacuation notifications. If we have to, we go door to door to do that. We knock on a door and then we list who is left and who is staying there so that our comm center knows when the fire department is in there, who's still there and who's not.
So Chief Royal, what would be the fire department's primary mission under those circumstances?
Well, again, situation dependent on weather and factors. We're going to make decisions on if we can fight or if we can't fight.
Fight the fire.
Yeah, fight the fire. So our initial thing, and that's why part of what we do is interlock with PD, because they're going to be doing the evacuations if we have the opportunity to fight. Now, if it's so critical that we can't fight it, which is way an exception, then we're going to help evacuate as well. And we're going to go get the ones that are most at risk and get them out of there. That is very much the exception. Most times we have time to set up and fight and put a perimeter between us and between our citizens and the fire, and that's going to be our goal.
And that's where, sorry, President Strand, that's where that incident command structure comes in to place. And it becomes very important because we are working hand in hand. We're in the same room, making decisions based on the weather, based on the direction of the fire, based on the size of the community that we have to evacuate. So it is very, very dynamic each time we do it.
Right. And Mr. Reed, what's OEM's primary responsibilities in a situation like that I outlined?
Sure. So the whole time this is going on, we're going to get with Red Cross and get our shelters set up, try to establish a joint information center so we can get messages out to folks that are proper and consistent. We'll also try to figure out how long this thing is going to run, so we'll have a liaison with the incident command post, and they'll listen in. If there's any shortages that we think may happen, we'll start that ball rolling because there's always a lead time to get that to our folks out there in the field. And we'll monitor that entire situation. If there's special needs or needs that the fire or PD need, we'll be there to backfill those needs. And one thing, President Strand, if I can, and I think what you need to realize as well is we do this while we're still managing the rest of the operations for the city. So if we need additional resources, we bring them in from days off, we bring them in from vacation time, whoever we can get. We use whatever resources we have for a major incident like a fire.
Yep.
Especially like Mr. Reed said, if it's 3 or 4 days, we may adjust our shifts. For those people working in the rest of the city, we normally set up a command for the fire and we set up a command for the rest of the city so that we have people managing both.
Okay. All right. Back to you, Randy.
Thank you. This is really great.
And Mr. Murray, I see you up there. We'll get you next.
Thank you, President Strand. Gentlemen, this is outstanding because our constituents, as President Strand said, is really listening to this. And what you've said is outstanding. Can you follow on to that a little bit? In the north side of Colorado Springs, the real concern is access. such as in Kettle Creek and Norfolk, they're really concerned about if roads might get blocked or congested. Can you talk a little bit about access in an emergency situation like that? Start with the Chief
Well,
Nitzke.
if there's roadways out, we'll be able to get people out. I mean, during Waldo Canyon, when we were vacating and evacuating Waldo Canyon, it was bumper to bumper. What we started doing is open up both ways, both east and west traffic for people that were exiting, since nobody was allowed in. So we just make adjustments based on the way the roadways are. If we have to, we'll take people outside and off the roadway if there's access.
That's
It's
what I was
whatever we
getting
need
at.
to do to get people out, we will do.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yeah, Mr. Green.
gentlemen, it's really good to see all three of you at one time. And today we're not going to refer to any specific land use proposals. There may be pending projects that will be considered by the Planning Commission or by the City Council. I just want to be really clear that if there is an emergency event, regardless if it's fire, flood, or if it's a tactical response, is that we use the infrastructure that's available. And so we have control of the infrastructure, we have the flow and how we're going to move traffic. And also we have ways to, just like when we receive the Amber Alert process on our smart devices, we have the same means to use that same type of process to notify individuals.
So, Mr. Green, we have iPause, which will do exactly that. So if we need to activate that, it goes through dispatch, and dispatch will activate the message in accordance with what the incident commander has given them. But even to Chief Nitzke's point, when we set up contraflow, if they need barricades or barriers, OEM would help coordinate that with the Department of Public Works and get that resource out to law enforcement and fire. So just we're there completely 100%.
Anything else, Mr. Green? Mr. Murray, hands up.
Well, looking at the 4 stars on the chief's shirt reminds me of the briefing I just listened to about the evacuation procedures of Kabul airport, where chaos was predicted, which is exactly what we're talking about here. But embedded in all our processes is something called a NEO, non-combatant evacuation operations. And I've done them, worked on them for every country in the world. And I'm sitting here looking for a plan, a procedure, a policy, a directive. I hear each one of you talk, but what's always been problematic is the coordination between all these things when the chaos ensues. And what I'm looking for is a plan of staging areas, a plan of mitigation issues that involve each piece of this city. You know where all the threats are in this city for a wildfire mitigation, wildfire situations. My goodness, I don't know how you're going to do the Broadmoor if that thing ever goes up. But having said that, I'm looking for documentation and I'm not seeing it. Now, when was the last evacuation exercise that you conducted in any one of these areas?
Jim, you
Councilman
want
Murray,
to take that first?
Yeah, I mean, which areas are you talking about, Councilman Murray? I mean, we've done the Broadmoor in the past. We've done Crystal Park in that area, Manitou. We
Okay,
have
now
one
just give
scheduled.
me dates and how big the operation was. Were the citizens engaged?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, date.
Well, I'd have to get that to you, sir.
Okay, again, lack of documentation not only surprises me, it distresses me as to, how do we assure the citizens? We've always had staging areas where the citizens knew where to go if we had to evacuate them. Okay, again, go ahead.
Well, sir, the problem with identifying staging areas prior to an incident happening is if that staging area is being affected by the fire, then it's no longer available. That's why we try to use emergency notification systems to let people know what's taking place and the best route to get out of their neighborhood and or a staging location to stage.
I would disagree with you. I think that if you looked at the areas, okay, that we have already identified as being a significant risk, okay, you can circle those things and you can come up with a reasonable environmental situation. Again, staging areas and everything else. And part of that is practice. Okay, you practice make perfect. And over time, what I've seen is you three folks get the disconnect because you don't communicate all the time. Sometimes you're not even on the same frequencies. But that's my prior experience as far as coordination goes.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I like to see things in writing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I'd like to, I guess, have the example of that where you saw that, because I think our coordination is very, very good. I would say, and I have just this week saw the list from Director Reed on the 7 drills that have been played out over the last 10 years with dates, so we can definitely get that to you. And I want to guarantee that the things that you're describing are going on. We work together. You know, if we're fighting the fire and PD's doing the evacuation, OEM is working on those areas for shelters and staging and all those things for people to go to. And again, I don't know where we have not had that happen in the scenarios that we've had in our town.
All right.
Okay, and I think we talked about 7 exercises in the last 10 years. And if we can get the dates, that'd be good. Mr. Helms, you had a comment, question?
I do. I just wanted to compliment. I had the opportunity to do a tour with Mr. Reed at the Emergency Operations Center, and the one thing I can let our council member Murray, my friend Murray, know is that from my experience of over 40 years of actually working in command post, operations centers, emergency operations centers, and leading those, I believe we have a world-class system there. And I looked in detail while we were there at the checklist and the opportunities to manage different kinds of emergencies. So I just want to put that out there, that I feel like we have a world-class operations center. And I wanted to compliment you on that, Mr. Reed.
And based on your experience for doing this for decades. So
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Ms. Henjum.
Yeah, so I hear and feel the tension around, are we prepared enough? Are we not prepared? Fear, we're getting hundreds of emails from folks around different things. I guess a question I have is what are we, perhaps to Mr. Murray's question, what are we communicating to the public? What's available that any member of the public can see online in terms of historically what kinds of drills we've done, what we're preparing for? What's available? How are we communicating with the public around this? And is there opportunity for improvement? And I really have no idea. It's a genuine question.
So let's take that. Twice a month, I'm on KRDO, either in the morning or the afternoon. We talk about preparedness. I pass out the website at pproem.com, has a ton of information. The city's website is also an excellent source of information on all of that. We do talk to the HOAs in the area. We offer training, whether it's a tabletop or a full-scale exercise. We walk through them on that. And this is constant throughout the year. The 7 exercises are full-scale exercises, but we have tabletops that are constant. We have communications with HOAs where we go out and speak to them. October 3rd, we have a northern exercise, full-scale exercise that's going to happen, and that's been in the works for 3 months or so. When we as a team go through the plans, keep in mind we exercise those plans, and if something doesn't look right, we go back and readdress it. So there's constant momentum, constant improvement. So there's no, if someone says they haven't heard an emergency management message, I'd be surprised. We are out there full time. So.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Scorman, have you got another question or comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make another comment based on what I've been learning, especially in the last 6 months or so, is that the coordinated response is unlike anything I have ever experienced in the past. We have, what is it, 64 mutual aid agreements with other fire departments, and the state is now putting resources in El Paso County on a 24/7 basis There is satellite information identifying fires in order to have us rapidly respond. And yeah, boy, in the past, we had some hard lessons to learn. There were, airplanes sitting on the ground for a week before they could be released by the fire service with fire retardant. There was a difficulty in having non-county employees go to the Black Forest fire. All those obstacles seem to be much less. And then the rapid response is much more the identification of fires quickly. Not saying it makes us absolutely safe. I think all these are really important issues, though, to talk about in the community. There's a different level. I think after last summer's Colorado fire season, it was a big wake-up call for the rest of the state. But again, I wanted to compliment the three of you on what I know that we do to help coordinate with Fort Carson, with all these other fire departments, and how we are all on the same team finally.
Thank you, Mr. Scorman. Mr. Donaldson.
Chief Niski and Chief Royal, Director Reed. This morning, President Strand and Councilman Helms and myself, we had the kind of the honor of seeing some of our policemen getting promoted. I think last week we saw some firemen and women promoted. I have no doubt that your men and women they're gonna risk their lives to save citizens as they did in Waldo Canyon. My concern is that we are making the task more difficult when we put more and more development in the WUI, when we infill into sites that are right up against the forest. Could you address that? Do you feel like development in those areas, those high-risk areas, the WUI, actually makes your job more difficult?
Kind of a tough question.
It is a tough question. So again, going back to lessons learned, right, with Waldo, we after that we enacted the hardening of structures that are built, and I don't think the three of us can answer as far as development, not development. That's a bigger question. But yeah, But we within the WUI, which we have identified, future houses should be built up to those standards, and because that'll help keep those neighborhoods safe and make them safer to live in for that population. And it has proven. There's a lot of lessons that came out of Waldo, not just for us here, but nationally, including the type of fencing and those type of things that are being used around the nation to strengthen and harden communities that are still being built in the WUI. And the other thing I wanted to throw out with that is on our site, we mentioned there's resources available on our fire site as well, but the FireWise program, which we went out and identified every single person's home and rated it, and you can pull it up today and look and go, my address, and it's red, yellow, or green. If it's red, we really would like you to work with us to try to mitigate. So
That's a good point. So any address within the community can do that and find out if their structure is threatened.
Really within the WUI. So those 35,000 homes,
Yeah.
is they can see kind of what their neighborhood looks like, and again, our Division of Mitigation is continually working with that and trying to update it as they do work.
Right. Mr. Scorman, did you, your hand still up, or is that from a previous request?
I'm sorry, it's a previous.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions or comments from council for our three leaders here that took a lot of time out of their morning? Did you have something else, Dave?
I just want to follow up on that. I knew I was throwing you a hard pitch there. But I guess my thought is that I know you're going to do everything you can, right? I think on our council obligation is to be careful that we don't put the men and women that these men represent in a tougher spot and our constituents. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have kind of ended this discussion for now. We very much appreciate all three of you Chief Royal, Chief Niski, Mr. Reed coming here and talking about evacuation process discussion. This is going to be an ongoing kind of an issue, but we've had a lot of constituents send us lots of emails and texts and phone calls. And so I think this is going to help them understand that we're on top of this. I'm anxious to see what we're going to do with this new program. Chief Royal, you talked about it. It is not the fleet program, though, correct?
No, it's not. It's called Zone Haven as part of it. And
Zone Haven.
That's beneath a bigger umbrella, but Zone Haven, and we're getting it scheduled right now to have. We had an initial briefing with it.
Yep.
But we're getting more players together to see the bigger briefing on it.
So we'll circle back maybe in October and get an update